Hello, everyone. Welcome back to part two of my awakening story. So, if you haven't watched part one, I advise you go do that. Otherwise, you're gonna miss half of the story. So, anyway, let's get right into it. So, I left off with me doing my 8-week mindfulness course at my first year in Cambridge. And as I said before, it caused a lot of shifts in me that I do want to go in more into at a later stage. All I'll say here is if you have been considering meditation, have tried it, and have rejected it, I'd say rethink that. Meditation is such an expansive thing that encompasses so many different practices that, if sitting in stillness isn't for you, there will be something else, and that is one of my missions, is to help teach people more about what meditation is and how they can how you can incorporate it into your life in a way that feels the most aligned and in sync with you as possible. Anywho, after after my course, I basically had one more term of uni, which was the second term, and then COVID hit. And I think this is when the practices I'd learned really came into practice, because this was a really challenging time. And mindfulness is all about how can you meet whatever comes into your life as a witness, as opposed to attaching to what you're going through in that moment, which is not an easy practice to do, especially when the whole world seems to be collapsing in some way. That's what it felt like at the time. It was like, wait, is this really happening? And so, yeah, I had to go home and I guess face a lot of the wounds that I hadn't faced that were associated with being at home. Yeah, it really caused me to go deeper into my self love journey. And one thing I'll speak about here, but I'll speak more about in a later episode, is my relationship with my body. I think I grew up in an environment where it was something that was spoken about a lot. Looks were important to members of my family, and not only in my family, but obviously on social media and society, it's something that is in our faces a lot. And during COVID was a time where I really decided to face my relationship with myself. My intention was to create such unshakable confidence in myself that no matter what anyone thought, anyone said, or whatever a news article would say about someone else's weight or body, I felt so good in myself and who I am that that no longer affected me. And that was where I really wanted to get to. But at the time, that's not where I was. And so COVID was a time where I really delved into healing that. I also started to delve a lot more into manifestation, spirituality as a whole, and really started to put these things into practice and just experimenting. COVID, I'm sure, brought up so much for everyone. It was such a significant time to be alive in so many ways. And whatever happened during that time to you, I'm sure it was memorable and significant. And I think this is what awakening is. It's shifts, it's paradigm shifts. And I know a lot of people had deep awakenings in COVID, and I think mine really started to happen then as well. Now looking back, I think it was a time where a lot was projected and a lot was brought to the surface. So, whatever slight issue you had, it was like magnified and intensified, and I think we saw that in the world as a whole. Anyway, let's move on from talking about COVID. So basically, I returned to uni after that, and of course, being in uni at this time had its challenges, but me and my friends definitely got super close, and it was also a beautiful time in so many ways. And I started to notice my identity as a spiritual person come to life more. Cambridge, of course, was a stressful place, and I really noticed that people would come to my room at uni for relaxation. And I had oils in my room, and I would do energy healing on people without knowing it. I've always been very tactile, and I know that that wasn't normal, but it was so natural for me. And I would just enjoy giving people love in that way. And this is another thing I'll go into at a later date. But yeah, I just started to notice that about myself. Yeah, and I also just noticed how my ability to handle stress at Cambridge was made a lot easier through my meditation practices, and also how if I'd stopped doing them for whatever reason because life got busy, that I would notice a shift in how I felt so much. And so it was so important to me to keep a regular practice of connecting with myself in that way. So, as I said before, I knew as soon as I finished my course that I wanted to dedicate my life to bringing this practice to more people. But of course, I was like, how do I do that? How do I build a career in this area? Like, do I become a therapist? What do I do? Like, there's no roadmap, so I'm gonna have to figure this out. And this is again where COVID was super helpful because I just had time to be on the internet for no reason and really just like allowed myself to go down different rabbit holes. And I found this program in America where basically I would get to work for an app that brings meditation to high school students. And I also got to do a retreat in Costa Rica. And I was like, this seems perfect. So I applied and I got in. And again, this was another moment where I really saw the power of manifestation because I wrote down the things I knew I wanted, which was travel, because all my travel plans got cancelled because of COVID. So I was like, I know I want to do that when I graduate. I always wanted to live in the US. I wanted to learn what it would be like to work in meditation as a startup, but also through academia, and I actually just got published with them. So, just getting to experience different avenues. Mentorship was really important, and I had the most amazing mentors. And yeah, basically, pretty much everything I wrote down came up in this program, and I was like, wow, this stuff works. And even with my visa, like I wasn't sure how the process was gonna work, but it all ended up working out. My retreat to Costa Rica was basically my lab that I worked for. They basically measure like what conditions and what behaviors lead to lasting change. So I got to do this retreat, and in that retreat, I got to experience so many things for the first time, including ecstatic dance, sound healing, cacao ceremony, just like movement practices I'd never done before, like authentic movement. And I just had the most incredible time. I love retreats, and I've done many since then because I love just being around people in a love bubble where people are having real conversations, dealing with their shit in a way where people are having real transformation, and also just like having nice food and just being in a beautiful place. I mean, for me, there's like nothing better. So I had the most incredible time there, and that was the first time I started to notice a lot of the places where I needed work because I was toxically positive. I was a good vibes only type of girl. And at that retreat, I noticed how so many people would cry about things, and I would be the only one who wasn't crying because I was always focusing on how other people felt. And I remember I was opening up to one of the retreat leaders about something, and she said to me, "How does that feel in your body?" And I was like, "Oh my gosh, I don't know. I've never been that in tune with how things feel in my body." And this awakened a whole new journey for me to connect to the wisdom of my body and to go into why I can't feel my emotions and why I shut myself off from them. After Costa Rica, I arrived in Austin, and Austin is a vortex in itself. It's built on limestone, which is a very special frequency stone, and a lot of spiritual people from around the world, including the US, including a lot of people from California, are moving there. And I really started to feel this energy of like, wow, I'm really meant to be here right now. And the amount of classes and workshops and things I was able to attend there was just incredible. I had never experienced so many of the things that I got to try, like erotic movement and so much ecstatic dance. It was just such a beautiful exploration, and I really got to learn so much just through all the amazing facilitators that I got to learn from. And there are also some earthly things that were huge initiations for me, like moving across the world and having to sort out my visa and having to just fend for myself in many ways. And this is something I want to talk about, is how so many earthly things are actually spiritual initiations if you choose to see it like that, because there's actually no difference between the earthly and the spiritual, because on certain ways of viewing reality, they're just one thing. And so it's just a lens through which to perceive what's happening in your reality. And I think, for example, having a business or launching a podcast, you can see that as a spiritual initiation. But this podcast is about my awakening. And I think in Austin, it was like a gradual process of all the work I was doing on myself that caused me to just go deeper and deeper and deeper. And also other earthy things, as I mentioned, a lot of relationships I had there really caused me to go deep into wounds that I had. My relationship with my best friend there, who I'm still best friends with now, our ability to communicate was something really new to me, and I really opened up to new levels of vulnerability that I never experienced before. My throat chakra opened up in new ways. And just the people I met, as I've been saying, just really shifted things. And on top of that, at my job, I was meditating in meetings, and it just gave me a whole new perspective on how to live life. And this is why I would say to anyone, it is so powerful to live in a new place, and I've always wanted to. Yeah, it just shows you different ways of living and different ways of being and different possibilities of how to live your life. Living in Austin and then having to leave was also a really intense journey, because it was this feeling of like building something and feeling happy, but then also having to let it go. And one of the biggest spiritual lessons is surrender. Also, learning that love is freedom and not attachment was a powerful lesson. As I said, a lot of my karma was getting cleared in Austin. And I think this is another thing, like have a look at your astrocartography and know that each land that you go to might be clearing something. This is how many forces are at play, more than we can ever know. And I think just the people I met there and the amount I was exposing myself to just opened me up to so many new ideas. Like at some places I would hang out, like there were residential astrologers. So I just got to understand myself and what I'm doing here on such a deep level. And then on top of that, when I had to leave, that was like a whole grieving process. And I think when I first left the UK, I didn't even cry. I had a habit of just not even processing what was happening in my life because I was so used to suppressing my emotion that when I left Austin, it was the first time that I allowed myself to feel and like vulnerably express that to someone. I remember me and my bestie were laying in bed. I literally, in the middle of the night, just burst out crying. And I didn't stop crying for like basically like probably like 10 days until I left. The amount of pain that I felt and like was expressing, it wasn't only about leaving Austin. It was feeling all the grief that I had never had the courage to feel. And I did not stop crying for basically like maybe a month. Something unlocked in me after that. And this is what I say is that like awakening isn't just one moment where everything shifts. It's a constant circling back to yourself in new ways. I also went to Awaken Your Higher Self in Austin in June, and I'm talking September when I left. And Awaken was also such a powerful event for me. I had like a whole exorcism and one of the breath works. And also, if you guys have any questions about anything that I'm talking about that I didn't go into enough detail on, let me know if you want to hear about it, because obviously there's so many things I could elaborate on, so I don't want to like go down any rabbit holes. But at Awaken, powerful breath work and also just a powerful acceptance of myself and a powerful stepping into the frequency I wanted to live in, which is love. Because there was when I truly learned that I could either live in love or fear. And I was like, love is the way I want to live. And the universe told me that it's preparing my heart for that love. And I think when I had that release and all those tears and like that was an opening of my heart. The next big event that happened was after I got back to London, which was a year ago now, or like September last year, so almost a year ago. I didn't know what I wanted to do again. Just like before graduating, and just like how I didn't know what I wanted to do after school. It's like this juncture where it's like, what do I do next? And it's like this waiting for the answer. Do I take action? Do I wait? And this like frustration. Anyway, I got a very strong message from Spirit. And again, this might sound woo-woo to people, and there is a longer story behind this, but it was my first intense psychic experience I had. And it told me to go to Australia, and so I listened. So I was back in America, and I went to Fiji on the way to Australia. And that again, another initiation of learning to surrender in a new way, to live in a way where I welcomed stillness and peace and really got rid of a lot of the anxiety that I had just picked up by living in places like the US and the UK. When you go to Fiji, it's like a whole different energy, and people honestly think you're weird if you're stressed out about being on time, because there's this thing called Fiji time. And I ended up going to stay on this island that was 5 hours away from the main island. And I don't even know how I decided to book this. It was just guided by my intuition. And like, yeah, basically no Wi-Fi, literally in the middle of nowhere. And I basically had these like bites by sandflies all over my legs. Anyway, I don't even know where I'm going with this, but there were challenges that came up is the point. And just learning that I can hold myself through these things that are challenging. And Australia, again, there were challenges, but each step along my way on my travels, like every time I needed help or every time I felt like I needed something, like that person or that thing would like find its way to me. And you just learn how supportive we are when you truly like surrender and let go. And it's just been a consistent unfolding since then of trusting in my gifts, trusting in my power, trusting that I will learn what I need to learn in order to serve. And as you guys probably have seen on my Instagram, like I've trained in now 12 different modalities since then. But beyond any training I've done, the most valuable thing we have is our experiences, because for me, life is our greatest teacher. I am a lifelong student of life. I'm here to help other people become the students in their lives so that they can learn to master themselves. And there are always going to be testing times, and no matter what you're going through, seeing everything as a spiritual initiation allows you to bring a godlike consciousness and awareness to every single thing that you're facing. And I know some people don't see the world like that, and that's okay. There's beauty in every perspective, and there's beauty in contrast, and that's what makes each person unique, because everyone sees the world in a different way. But this is me sharing how I see the world. It's my belief that we are here to bring the light of our awareness to all parts of us, to all of our experiences that are happening for our souls to evolve. Awakening is a lifelong return to love, a return to the love that we are. Through every test, through every challenge, through the darkness, through everything, it's always the question of, can you be the witness to what's happening, and can you return to love? So thank you all for being here and listening to this. I hope this inspired you to look at your life in a new way. Know that the story of your life has power on many dimensions. Sending so much love. Have a good rest of your day. Bye.